Hi there. You've arrived in a quiet corner of the world. Here we slow down and build things, just for peace. Every act of creation is also an act of reflection. The projects we complete leave quiet impressions in our homes, in our memories, in the calm places of the mind that are often forgotten. So, as you listen tonight, as you let your breathing slow and your thoughts wander gently, imagine yourself building something real. Picture the tools, the textures, the steps unfolding one by one. Let the sound of the story guide you through the rhythm of making. It's a story about remembering what creation feels like. Welcome to Building for Sleep, Building a Pool. Part 1. The Vision and the Groundwork. Take a slow, unhurried breath. Let your shoulders settle. There's no deadline here, no pressure to achieve. Only a quiet idea, as soft and steady as a breeze through leaves. A pool in your own garden, not as a grand statement or a race to finish, but as a place where stillness can collect. Like dew on morning grass. You step outside with that thought in your pocket. The light is gentle, the kind that doesn't insist, the kind that waits for you. Grass brushes against your ankles as you walk, and the air carries a quiet smell of soil and green things. You are not building yet. You are only looking, listening, letting the land tell you what it knows. You pause near the boundary of the yard and rest your fingers on the handle of a tape measure. It doesn't matter if you extend it right away. First, your eyes drift across the space, where sun lingers, where shadows nap, where the breeze usually comes from. You notice how the ground tilts just a little, almost unnoticeably, toward the far corner. How small pockets of grass are thicker where water gathers after rain, and how the warm patch near the stone path seems to invite late afternoon light. It begins not with numbers, but with feeling. You picture a pool that fits here the way a thought fits a quiet mind, naturally, without crowding, without strain. Maybe 4 meters by 6. Maybe something smaller, an intimate basin for floating, for unhurried pauses between day and night. Or something elongated, a slow lane for drifting laps when the morning is cool and blue. You don't commit. You don't have to. You let the scale hover softly in imagination, like a bird that hasn't quite landed yet. Depth drifts in next. You imagine stepping down a gentle stair, water climbing your legs in polite increments. Perhaps a shallow shelf for sitting, reading, dangling your hands in. Perhaps a deeper section, not dramatic, just enough that the body feels weightless, the mind a little quieter. 1 meter feels friendly. 1.5 feels like calm immersion. 2 meters whispers of stillness and depth. You picture light falling through water. How the deeper it is, the more the world above becomes a shimmered suggestion, a painting made of air and sky. The tape measure finally whispers out. A thin metallic sigh as it extends over grass. You set one stake, then another. A length of string stretches between them with the slightest tremble, like the surface of a pond touched by a breeze. You walk the outline slowly, as if it were already filled with water, as if the grass beneath were a reflection that could hold your gaze. Corners align, edges breathe. You shift a stake by a hand's width, then a little more. and somehow the shape feels right. You can't explain why. You don't need to. Orientation finds its way into your thoughts. Where does the sun wake? Where does it rest? Morning light is gentle. Afternoon light is generous. Evening light is kind. You imagine the water catching each of these in turn. Pearl, gold, then rose, and holding them for you like a quiet companion. If privacy matters, you notice where neighboring windows look in, where the fence casts its shadow, where a slender tree might soften the view without stealing the sun. Now the land begins to speak in a different voice, the practical murmur of soil and drainage. You kneel, pressing fingers into the ground. It yields, then springs back. Clay holds and clings. Sand sighs and shifts. Loam balances between the two. Soft, cooperative. You imagine rain, how it arrives, how it lingers, where it chooses to gather. You picture a trench, shallow and discreet, giving water an easy path away from the pool. A little French drain hidden beneath stone or soil, quietly doing its work on wet days. It's a tender kind of planning. Not to command the water, just to guide it gently where it wants to go anyway. Materials drift in, respectful and patient. Concrete, calm, enduring, sculptable. It accepts any shape you offer and returns strength in exchange for time. Fiberglass, smooth, seamless, arriving all at once like a finished thought, set carefully into the earth, simple to tend, easy on the hands. Vinyl, soft and friendly, a skin over a formed shell, forgiving and replaceable, an invitation to comfort and clean lines. Each option speaks a different dialect of patience. Concrete says, "Let's take our time, and I will last." Fiberglass says, "Let's keep it simple, and I will be kind." Vinyl says, "Let's be comfortable, and I will be gentle." You consider how you live. Do you want to shape each curve yourself, to feel the trowel glide, to see the edges take form under your own steady hand? Do you want the relief of simplicity, the ease of something that arrives ready, like a gift? Or do you want flexibility, the chance, years from now, to refresh the surface like changing a season? You hold each idea for a quiet moment, place it down again, and let the mind return to the wider view. The edge becomes a character of its own. It could be crisp and modern, a thin line that turns the pool into a mirror cut from the ground. It could be natural, with stone that remembers rivers, pieces you place one by one, letting their shapes teach you their best positions. Maybe a coping that warms under the sun, wide enough for sitting, soft enough for bare feet, cool enough at dusk. You can almost feel the texture under your fingers. Slate, smooth, limestone grain. Tile cool and certain. You imagine a hand sliding along it, the way you might when thinking of nothing in particular. Eyes half on the sky, half on the water. Beyond the edge is the world you'll move through. A path to reach the pool. Space to sit. Somewhere for a towel. A book. A cup that leaves a ring of condensation in summer. You picture a small terrace made of pavers, or a deck of pale wood that brightens in sunlight. Perhaps a single tree nearby, chosen not at random but with care. One that drops little, casts dappled shade. welcomes birds that sing but do not startle, lavender along the border for scent, grasses that sway and never scold the wind, a low light or two that glow more like memory than electricity. The water has its own quiet needs, not urgent, just thoughtful. A pump that hums softly, steady and sure. A filter that clears what drifts in with the world. A skimmer that catches leaves before they become stories at the bottom. You imagine the faint, constant music of circulation, a heartbeat you barely notice. You imagine how you'd like to tend it, lightly, regularly, simply. The chemistry is less a puzzle than a ritual, a balance that, once found, rarely needs raising voices. You picture test strips that say, "All is well," and a small storage place where the quiet tools of care live out of sight. Heating floats in as an optional softness. Solar panels that borrow from the day and offer comfort in return. A small heat pump that sips at power and returns a few more weeks of gentleness at the shoulders of summer. Or the decision not to heat at all, to let the water simply be what the air invites it to be. Nighttime covers drift across your mind, ones that keep leaves away and warmth nestled in, that fold back in the morning like a well-kept secret. Safety arrives without fuss. A shallow shelf where children, guests, or tired legs can linger. Steps that are generous and predictable, not steep. A handhold along the edge, perhaps not seen but felt when needed. If fences are required where you live, you imagine one that does its job quietly. Not a prison for the view, but a gentle boundary the eye can look through as if it weren't there. You let the practicalities flicker into view and drift on. Permits that nod to the rules of the place you live. Setbacks that respect neighbors and trees. Cables and pipes buried below that want to be left alone. You don't have to solve them tonight. You just notice them, like stones along a path you'll walk later in the week. Even paperwork can be gentle if you meet it with a calm heart and steady breath. Tools make their unhurried entrance, not as demands but as companions you'll hold in your hands when the time is right. A spade with a handle that fits your palm. A wheelbarrow that turns without complaint. A level that tells the truth with a bubble and a line. A rake for gravel. A trowel for smoothing. A chalk line that teaches straightness with a single gesture. Perhaps a compacting plate. A hum that settles the ground into readiness. They will wait for you. For now, it is enough to know their names. Budget does not press you. It stands at a respectful distance and clears its throat politely. You nod back. You sketch soft numbers in your mind. Materials. A margin for surprises, a little extra for a detail that might bring quiet joy. You imagine doing some work yourself, the kind that feels like meditation when taken slowly, and inviting help where strength or skill asks for it. You picture phases, planning now, marking soon, digging next, a rhythm that unfolds like a long, calming song. Time, too, asks for honesty, but not urgency. You think in seasons rather than days. A spring for groundwork, perhaps. A summer for finishing and filling when water is welcomed by the air and the day extends its open hands. Or perhaps the opposite. To build in quiet months and greet the first warmth with a finished, waiting blue. You kneel again and pinch a bit of soil. Crumble it between your fingers. Feel how it lets go. You think about drainage once more. How a layer of gravel, then sand, forms a bed that breathes. How pipes, hidden and patient, carry away what the sky offers too generously. You picture weep holes where they're needed, a slope that is not visible to the eye but felt by gravity. A kindness granted to the structure so it can last, so it can age without complaint. You take a step back and consider the shape once more. Rectangles are peace. Ovals are softness. Kidney curves are memory. They remind the eyes of rivers and bodies of long afternoons and drifting. You picture how you move through space, how you carry a tray, how you set down a towel, how a chair turns toward the sun without scraping against stone. You walk through these motions slowly, as if practicing a dance that has not yet been choreographed. Water wants to be clean, so you imagine how it will circulate. A return here, a skimmer there, paths that form a quiet loop. You see in your mind how eddies might form in corners, how a little adjustment could keep them from ever becoming still. You imagine priming a pump for the first time and hearing it catch. The sound barely louder than your own breath. Lighting arrives gently, mostly in your imagination at first. You picture small, warm points along the path, low and kind to the eyes. Perhaps a light or two beneath the waterline. Not bright, not demanding attention, but turning the pool into a lantern after dusk. A place where darkness is not a wall, but a soft blanket. Landscaping keeps its voice low. Plants that drop little and grow steadily. A few perennials that return without complaint. Herbs near the edge for scent, and to brush against with your hand as you pass. Mulch that stays where you place it. Gravel that doesn't wander. Borders that let the vacuum and broom glide without frustration. You imagine pruning days in winter, watering in early morning, the kind of maintenance that feels more like tending a friend than managing a chore. You think of sound. How water sounds when it spills lazily from a small lip into the pool. How that note changes with wind. How it can be turned down to silence or up to a hush when you want the world to recede. You imagine listening from a distance, across an open door in the evening, as a soft burble reminds you that the day is still breathing. In your mind, you place a simple bench. Not too close, not so far that you feel separate from the water. You imagine sitting there with a book you barely read, or with nothing at all. Watching sun pass across the surface like a slow handwriting. You let the idea of use wander through. Not parties, not noise, unless they come softly, but the everyday rituals. Dipping hands in the morning, floating on your back in late afternoon. Sneaking out at night to watch stars make quiet patterns on the surface. You imagine the way the body loosens after a day, how breath slows without being told, how a few minutes in water erases the weight you didn't realize you were carrying. The administrative things nod from the edges again. Someone at the local office who stamps plans. A paper that says yes. A neighbor who squints over and smiles. You picture all these as calm, solvable steps. Not barriers, just stones across a shallow stream. You return to the outline and walk it once more. The string looks almost like it is holding water already, a delicate horizon hovering just above the grass. You move one stake a little, then another. angles sigh into place. A corner opens itself a touch to catch more sun. Your feet learn the path they'll walk for months, and the ground feels less like a surface and more like a partner. You think about where the equipment will live, not as a mess, but as a small, well-tended corner. A box that keeps the pump shaded and the filter protected. A door that opens quietly, hoses coiled into perfect spirals, labels that save you from wondering later. You imagine future you, grateful you took this moment to make simple things simpler. You picture the first delivery, gravel in a low, neat pile, sand, golden and fine, rebar bundled like lines of music, bags of cement that will soon become the shape of water. You imagine touching each one, noticing their weight, feeling the cool of steel, the way sand runs away from your palm and then returns to it. A list forms, not as a taskmaster, but as a friendly whisper. Stakes, string, tape measure, level, shovel, spade, rake, wheelbarrow, gravel, sand, forms, steel, concrete, skimmer, returns, valves, pipe, tiles or coping or stone, lights if you wish, heaters if you want, plants that will live with you gently. The list doesn't press. It simply sits beside you, ready. You think of contingency, of kindness to yourself. There will be small surprises hidden in the ground, a rock you didn't expect, a rain that arrives sooner than the forecast suggested. You give yourself permission now to pause when that happens, to make tea, to wait a day, to let decisions rise at their own pace. You promise yourself that this is not a test. It's a conversation with space and time. You step back farther to the very edge of the yard and look at the whole picture. House, path, trees, sky. Where do you want your eyes to rest when you stand at the kitchen sink? Where do you want the first slant of light to land in spring? How will winter feel here? Bare branches reflected in a still surface, a quiet tableau that reminds you the year is breathing even in its sleep. The choice of finish drifts back in a final time. A pale interior makes the water Caribbean bright in afternoon. A deeper tone turns it into a quiet lake, contemplative, calm. You imagine the color of water against the color of sky where you live, how they might complement each other on most days, how they might surprise you on others. You think of the first day you'll step into it. You will go slowly because the water is cool and welcoming, and because going slow feels right after all of this. You imagine a hand skimming the surface, the way ripples arc out and return, the way they touch the edge and quietly fold back in. All of this, every detail, every breath, is still planning, still vision. And yet, it is also building. You are building something inside the shape of your days. You are deciding what peace will look like when it takes form in the world. Evening draws its soft curtain across the garden. The string lines glimmer a little in the last light. You gather the tape measure, the leftover stakes, not because you're done, but because you're ready. Ready to let the idea sleep, ready to meet it again tomorrow with hands and tools instead of only thoughts. It is a kind of kindness to stop now, to let the ground rest and the plan breathe. You pause at the door and turn once more to look. You can almost see the pool there, as if it has always belonged. Not loud, not eager to be noticed. Just a quiet space where the sky can come to rest. You step inside and leave the evening outside where it belongs. In your mind, the outline remains, floating like a gentle echo. The measurements, the materials, the path, the light, the way water will turn a small part of the world into a mirror. You feel the simple, sturdy satisfaction that comes from knowing tomorrow will be for marking and beginning, for turning the first layer of earth, for letting the dream touch the ground. Tonight is only for rest, for letting the plan settle into a shape that will be easy to carry, for breathing in and breathing out, and remembering that calm things grow well when they're given time. You put the day down, and the day, grateful, puts you down as well. The garden waits outside like a promise, quiet, patient, sure, and with that assurance, you let your eyes close. The pool, still only an outline drawn in thought and string, drifts gently into the soft blue of imagination. You don't need to hold it anymore. It will be there in the morning. The ground will remember, and water, when the time comes, will remember too. Part 2. The shape takes form. Morning arrives without fanfare. It slips through the curtains, pale and calm, and the air carries that faint scent of soil after a cool night. You wake with the same quiet thought that carried you to sleep. The pool, still only a shape in the mind, but now ready to meet the ground. There's no rush. You stretch, sip something warm, and step outside. Dew shines on the grass, tiny mirrors catching the first rays of sun. The stakes and strings are waiting where you left them, patient and precise, like musical notes that already know their melody. The air feels gentle against your skin. You walk the perimeter slowly, following the lines, retracing the borders of the dream you drew yesterday. Each step presses softly into the damp grass, and each footprint feels like the first word of a story being written again. You pause at one corner, take in the whole shape from above, and breathe. Today the work begins, but it isn't work in the hurried sense. It's a conversation between body and earth, between what exists and what you imagine. Creation, at this pace, is a kind of listening. You begin by firming up the outline. Wooden stakes go deeper this time, and you pull the string taut, watching it quiver slightly in the breeze. It's a simple geometry, but already the rectangle, or curve, or soft, irregular shape you've chosen feels like a doorway. A frame not just for water, but for thought. You measure diagonals to make sure the corners are true, and when the numbers whisper their agreement, you nod to yourself. Balance, proportion, calm. It's satisfying in the quiet way that only precision can be. A sense that things are beginning to align, outside and inside alike. You mark the outline with chalk or flour or pale sand, drawing a visible path where the digging will begin. The act feels ceremonial, like tracing the first brush strokes on a canvas. When you finish the loop, you stand still for a moment in the middle. The space feels both empty and full. The garden, so ordinary yesterday, is already transforming. The metal edge of the shovel bites gently into the soil. The sound is low, a muffled crunch followed by the soft hiss of loosened earth. You lift the first shovelful. Dark, damp, alive with scent. There is something grounding about that smell. Iron, clay, roots, and memory. You tip it aside, and the first hollow appears. Small, insignificant, but unmistakable. A beginning you can touch. You repeat the motion, find a rhythm. Push, lift, turn, breathe. The sound becomes music. The scrape of metal, the sigh of soil falling, the rustle of leaves above. You work slowly enough to notice everything. The temperature shifting, the light moving, how each breath syncs with each stroke. Soon the rhythm becomes meditative. You're not forcing the earth. You're persuading it, coaxing it to rearrange. You learn how deep to press before the shovel meets resistance. Sometimes it's a stone, sometimes a root reaching sideways. You pause, kneel, and free it carefully. A root can be cut, but more often you follow it back to where it disappears, a reminder that this land has its own quiet architecture. A web of lives you hadn't seen before. You move around it, respectful. As the hours pass, the ground lowers. Your body warms, sweat beads at your neck, but there is no urgency. This isn't labor, it's rhythm, a kind of manual meditation. Every few minutes you stop to stretch to look up at the sky through the growing frame of the pit. You notice the soil's layers. A top layer rich and dark, a middle band the color of baked clay, and below that, pale sand like the ghost of an ancient shore. Each layer tells a story. Decades, centuries, quiet, sedimented time. By midday, you've carved the first clear impression of the pool. The sides slope gently inward. The center dips like a shallow breath in the earth. You sit on the edge, legs hanging into the hollow, and feel the subtle cool rising from below. A breeze moves across your skin, smelling faintly of minerals. After a rest, you pick up again. The shadows have shifted, giving you new light to work by. You widen the space, refine the angles. Each shovel stroke feels lighter now, not because the earth is easier, but because the shape in your mind is guiding you. It's as if the pool itself is whispering where to dig next. Sometimes you pause to scrape loose dirt into a pile. Sometimes you just lean on the shovel handle and breathe. You notice birds landing nearby, curious robins hopping closer to inspect small worms turned from hiding. Even the insects seem to have accepted your presence. You're part of the landscape's rhythm now. When you reach the planned depth, you climb down into the hollow. The world above looks different from here. The fence taller, the sky closer. You run a hand along the compacted earth wall, feeling the temperature drop, the texture alternating between crumbly and firm. You imagine water pressing against it one day, the soft, even pressure that turns soil into mirror. You clean the base with a flat shovel, leveling small ridges, cutting out clumps. The scent of damp clay rises again, grounding and cool. You draw a line in the dirt where the slope transitions to the deeper section, a graceful curve that feels natural, like the bottom of a river. Its geometry softened by instinct. Now it's time to give the earth something it can breathe through. You pour the first load of gravel into the base. The stones tumble and clatter, a sound like rain magnified. They spread unevenly, but that's fine. You move them with the rake in broad, slow strokes. The light bounces off the pale surfaces, and for a moment the whole pit glows. Each rock, dull on its own, becomes luminous in company. You think of how even rough things can look harmonious when arranged with patience, when the layer is even. You step carefully over it, the crunch underfoot steady and comforting. The gravel will hold air and carry away water that doesn't belong. Let the foundation rest lightly yet securely. Over it goes sand, fine, warm, golden. You let it pour from the bag in thin streams, watching how it falls and gathers. It moves like water sliding, adjusting, leveling itself with quiet intelligence. You kneel to spread it. Your hands sink into its softness. Your fingers trace circles until the surface is smooth as skin. When you finish, the floor looks almost liquid already. The pool, even empty, has begun to suggest its purpose. You step back, brush off your hands, and exhale. The light has turned warmer. Late afternoon already. Time has been slipping past unnoticed, measured not in hours, but in breaths and handfuls of earth. Tomorrow, or maybe later today, you begin the invisible structure, the bones that will hold what's to come. Steel rods wait nearby, bundled neatly like tall grass. You unroll them, each one gleaming faintly in the declining sun. You lay the first length across the sand, then another at right angles. Soon a grid begins to appear. Quiet order where there was once only soft ground. The rods intersect. You tie them with thin wire, twisting carefully until they hold. Not tight enough to strain, just enough to trust. It's patient work, each knot a tiny act of attention, each crossing a promise of strength. You think of it as weaving, as if you're stitching together the skeleton of an idea. When you finish, you stand back. The pattern catches the last rays of the day, a delicate lattice of silver against gold sand. You could almost mistake it for art, and in some quiet way it is. The rebar glints like a constellation at your feet, an earthy mirror of the stars that will soon appear above. You rest on the edge, listening to the world settle around you. A soft wind moves through the garden, carrying the smell of cut grass and warm metal, the sounds of evening. A bird's low call, the distant hum of life beyond the fence. Gather at the edges of your focus, but you stay inside this circle of stillness. There's a quiet pride here, not in progress, but in presence. You've turned an idea into something that occupies space, something the world can see and touch. It's not finished, but it exists, and that, in creation, is its own kind of completion. You cover the hollow lightly with a tarp to keep the night dew out. Pat the ground as if to say good night, and step back toward the house. Behind you, the pit glows faintly in the twilight. A silent, patient promise beneath the sky. Another day. The air smells faintly of concrete dust, the kind of smell that means transformation is near. The gravel, the sand, the steel, all waiting, like instruments before a song begins. You mix the first batch slowly. Cement, sand, aggregate, water. Each element unremarkable on its own, but together they turn into something enduring. You stir until the texture thickens, until it slides rather than pours, like gray honey with purpose. The sound of the mixer is steady and deep, a kind of mechanical heartbeat. You listen as you work, the repetition grounding you. When you pour it into the base, it spreads outward with a soft, sighing sound. Steam rises faintly as moisture meets warmth. You guide it with a trowel, smooth it with slow arcs that leave faint ripples, then fade them out. The smell is earthy, mineral, alive. It's the scent of something changing state, from liquid to solid, from idea to form. You move methodically, section by section, leveling, spreading, blending edges. The light shifts from white to gold as the day leans toward evening. Shadows ripple across wet gray like clouds over a lake. Occasionally, you kneel to check the level, the small bubble floating perfectly between its marks. Each time it aligns, a quiet satisfaction hums in your chest. The pool is finding its balance, and so are you. Hours pass unnoticed. The surface, once chaotic, becomes smooth, a sheet of stone that already hints at reflection. You run the flat of your palm over it. Cool, firm, honest. You clean your tools slowly. Rinse them with a gentle stream of water, watching the thin gray swirl run toward the drain. It looks almost like liquid steel before it vanishes into earth again. You sit nearby, the day's light fading around you. The concrete gleams faintly in twilight, its wet sheen catching the first few stars. You don't touch it now. It needs time, its own quiet night to cure and become. You lie back on the grass, arms behind your head, the smell of dust and dampness mingling in the air. Above, clouds drift lazily, their bellies catching the last hues of sunset. Rose, violet, gray. You think of how creation feels at this stage. Half done, half dream. The physical work has slowed your mind. Each movement an exhale that emptied a little more noise. You are tired, but not weary. The kind of tired that feels like peace settling into the body. You close your eyes and imagine the next phase. Walls rising, edges smoothing. Water eventually arriving like a long-awaited guest. But for now, the ground rests. You rest with it. The pool is no longer an idea on paper. It has weight now, shape, depth, and the first whisper of permanence. It will dry overnight, its surface hardening molecule by molecule, quiet as stone forming under a river. In a few days, you'll build the walls. Lay the coping, prepare for the shimmer of tile and the clarity of water. But tonight is for stillness. You've done what you could. The earth has responded kindly. The stars above, reflected faintly in the sheen of concrete, look almost like they belong there already. Small, bright, patient reflections of what the pool will soon hold for real. You stand, take one last look, and whisper something. Maybe gratitude, maybe wonder. Then walk back toward the house. Behind you, the shape remains, a vessel waiting for water, a dream waiting for light. The night closes gently around it. The pool sleeps, and so will you. Part 3. The Still Water. Dawn rises quietly, almost shyly. The air is cooler, the kind that brushes the skin and reminds you the world has turned once more. You step outside barefoot, still carrying the warmth of sleep, and find the pool resting where you left it, solid, calm, certain. The concrete has hardened, smooth beneath a fine layer of dust that catches the first light. It looks like stone born from intention. For a long while you simply stand and look at it. The ground, once ordinary, has become something sculpted. The hollow now feels ancient and new all at once. There's a sense of stillness that comes only after effort. The kind of quiet that follows music when the last note has drifted away. You kneel and touch the surface. Cool, dense, faintly textured like memory itself. The world hums softly in the distance. A bird, a passing car, the faint hiss of morning wind in leaves. Here, though, within this small boundary, the silence holds. Today, you will bring color and reflection. Today, the pool will become itself. You begin by sweeping away the pale dust that settled overnight. Each motion of the broom leaves behind clean streaks of gray. It's not work, it's a ceremony. You move slowly, almost reverently, hearing the soft rasp of bristles, watching the faint clouds of powder drift upward, catching sunlight like smoke in a dream. When the floor is clear, you sit for a moment at the shallow end. The walls curve upward around you like an unfinished thought. You remember the first line you drew with string, the first spade of earth, the smell of wet sand. So much of it felt abstract then, but now you are surrounded by form, a vessel ready to hold stillness. You unpack your materials. A box of tiles, a small bucket of adhesive, a trowel that fits neatly into your palm, a sponge worn soft from years of other projects. Each tool is a friend in miniature quietly waiting to help you finish what you began. You lift the first tile and hold it against the morning light. Its color shifts between blue and silver, depending on how it catches the sky. You imagine it underwater, how it will soften, how it will multiply light, how it will turn movement into shimmer. The first touch of adhesive spreads across the concrete with a satisfying scrape. You press the tile into place, feeling it settle. A small click as it finds its home. Another joins it, then another. A rhythm begins. Press, align, breathe, smooth. You lose yourself in the repetition. Your breathing slows to match the pace of your hands. Time thins out, stretches, disappears. Each tile adds its voice to the quiet pattern, a small promise of reflection. The wall begins to change character. The dull gray gives way to something alive, a mosaic that catches the day in fragments. You work upward and around, sometimes pausing to admire the play of light, sometimes to rest your wrists and look at the sky. There's beauty in this kind of patience. Not in perfection, but in continuity. Each small square depends on the last. Each mistake forgiven by the whole. Hours pass unnoticed. The sun climbs, pauses, begins its slow descent again. You tile the steps, the edges, the deep end where shadow now lingers. When the final piece clicks into place, you sit back on your heels and exhale deeply. The pool glows with its new skin. It's not the water yet, but it already has the look of something that remembers light. You mix the grout, thick and creamy and begin pressing it between the tiles. The sponge follows, slow circles that remove the excess, revealing clean lines, soft edges, gentle continuity. Each motion smooths the day. Each swipe erases effort until only calm remains. The smell of cement mingles with warmth and faint humidity. Your hands ache slightly, a pleasant, human ache that says you've done something real. When you finish, you sit at the edge again. The tiles gleam, some pale, some dark, together forming a surface that shifts with every breath of light. You run a damp cloth over the coping, wipe down the last traces of dust, and step back. It's done. The space that once was soil is now a mirror waiting to be filled. You bring the hose and lay it at the deep end. When you open the valve, the sound of rushing water feels almost sacred. It hits the tile with a hushed splash, echoing faintly off the walls. You watch as the stream curls and spreads, a moving thread drawing itself across the floor. The first few centimeters are quick, ripples darting outward like small animals exploring a new land. But as the pool deepens, the water's movement slows, its surface finding gravity and grace. You sit on the coping and watch. Sunlight refracts through the rippling surface, throwing liquid patterns against the new walls. It looks like light learning how to swim. The sound is constant but never loud. A trickle, a murmur, the rhythm of something returning home. You rest your chin on your knees, eyes half closed, and simply listen. Hours pass gently. The shadows slide across the garden. The air changes color. The pool fills 1 inch at a time, an unfolding that asks for nothing but patience. At times, you get up. Walk around it slowly, watching how the reflection shifts with each angle. A piece of sky here, a hint of tree there, a fleeting image of yourself distorted, as if the water is learning who you are. When it nears the top, you reach down and dip your fingers in. The water is cool, smooth, deliberate. It feels heavier than air, yet softer than silk. You swirl it once. Watch ripples travel outward until they fade into stillness. You turn off the hose. The sound stops. For a moment, the silence is immense. Then, faintly, the smallest wave touches the edge, and the pool exhales for the first time. You stand at the edge and look down. The sky looks back. Perfect, reversed, infinite. You move your head, and the reflection follows, as if the air and the water are conspiring to remind you that they are the same. You walk around it once more. Every angle is different. From one side, it looks shallow and playful. From another, deep and meditative. From above, endless. You think of all the hours you've spent. The planning, the marking, the digging, the mixing. They all flow together now, like tributaries feeding this quiet lake. You kneel, let your hand drift through again. Watch the lines of light scatter like delicate glass. There's no sound but the whisper of water against stone. You realize this is not just the completion of a project. It's a small, tangible reminder of how patient creation transforms everything it touches. The land, the hands, the heart that guided them. When the water settles, you add the finishing touches. Not out of necessity, but affection. You place a stone at the edge, a smooth river rock you've kept on your desk for years. It fits perfectly beside the step, as if waiting all along for this place. You set 2 low chairs nearby, light wood that will silver gently in the sun, a pot of lavender on one side, its scent carrying easily across water, and on the other, a cluster of grasses that sway without complaint. You install a small light beneath the surface. When it glows, it doesn't pierce the water. It drifts through it, turning the pool into a quiet lantern. You test it at dusk. Watch the pale shimmer ripple across the tiles, and feel something inside you mirror that glow. The first evening feels like exhale. The air is still warm, but no longer demanding. You sit beside the pool, bare feet on the coping, the smell of water and stone rising softly. The surface is so still it looks like glass. A leaf drifts down from somewhere above, lands with the gentlest concentric ripples. They move outward, fade, and the reflection restores itself, complete, undisturbed, forgiving. You lean back and watch the sky darken. Stars begin to appear, one by one, mirrored perfectly below. The symmetry feels almost impossible, as though the earth itself has learned to dream upward. You listen. Crickets, a faint breeze, your own slow breath. Everything else has gone quiet. For a long time, you simply exist there, no longer thinking about construction or progress or time. You are just a shape beside another shape, both resting, both reflecting. When night deepens fully, you switch on the light beneath the water. The pool becomes something different, a quiet well of gold and blue, light rippling across the nearby leaves and the wall of the house. You walk around it once more. Your footsteps make almost no sound. From this side, you see the light reach up through the surface, splitting into 100 soft strands. It reminds you of candlelight seen through glass, or moonlight bending through a thin fog. You crouch down, touch the water again. It's cool, but the light makes it feel warm to your eyes. You stir it slowly, and the glow moves with you, a dance of brightness following the arc of your hand. It's mesmerizing, and for a moment you forget entirely that you built this. It feels instead like it has always been here, as though you merely uncovered something that was waiting beneath the surface of ordinary life. You think of the mornings to come, early swims before work, quiet afternoons with a book, evenings when rain dimples the surface and turns it into a percussion of calm. Every season will bring its own kind of reflection. It's strange, this moment, to reach the end of something that doesn't feel like an end at all. There's no fanfare, no applause, just the sound of water breathing in its new home. You realize that building a pool was never only about water or structure. It was about patience, the practice of meeting resistance without tension. It was about the slow art of shaping something until it mirrors your inner rhythm. You remember the first day, the string lines, the hesitation, the uncertainty about where to begin. All of that feels distant now. Not vanished, but transformed, absorbed into the stillness before you. The pool has become more than a thing. It's a lesson. It's the proof that stillness can be made tangible, that even motionless water holds a pulse, if you listen closely enough. You lean closer, and for a moment you see your reflection perfectly framed. The light beneath glows softly through it, turning your features into a shimmer. It's not vanity, it's recognition. The person in the water is the same one who imagined it, who measured and planned and dug and poured, but also the one who learned to pause, to breathe between each act, to let things unfold instead of forcing them. You whisper, "Thank you," though you're not sure whether it's to the water, the earth, or yourself. It doesn't matter. The gratitude fits everywhere. You sit again. Watch as a soft breeze wrinkles the reflection, turning your image into ripples that drift outward. They disappear quietly, and what remains is just the sky. Vast, clear, forgiving. The night grows cooler. You wrap yourself in a light blanket and stay a little longer. The air tastes faintly of minerals and calm. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, and then silence returns. The surface of the water catches the moon now, a clean circle trembling gently. You watch it for a long time, letting your breath slow to match its rhythm. Eventually, your eyes grow heavy. The pool blurs at the edges, the stars above and below merging into a single haze of light. You realize you could fall asleep right here, and it would be the same kind of sleep as water itself. Deep, still, reflective. You whisper a small goodbye to the day. Stand slowly and take one last look. The pool waits, serene, eternal in its quiet way. Tomorrow it will shimmer under sun again. Rain will visit. Leaves will fall and be gathered. Seasons will pass, but it will always hold what you built into it. Time, attention, calm. You walk back toward the house. Behind you, the faint glow on the water lingers, a heartbeat of light pulsing softly in the dark. You pause at the door, look once more over your shoulder, and smile. The reflection wavers, then steadies. Everything you gave it, every motion, every moment, is there, rippling gently, alive and still. You step inside, the sound of the night folding around you. The pool remains, patient, complete, a small ocean of peace at the edge of your world. And as you drift toward sleep, you carry that stillness with you. The quiet hum of creation fulfilled, the rhythm of your own breath echoing the water's calm pulse, the knowing that nothing, truly nothing, was ever wasted. Part 4. The water remembers. The years pass quietly. You do not notice them arriving, only how the light changes. Each season writes its own reflection into the water, a calendar without numbers, only colors. The pool holds them all, spring's tender brightness, summer's gold, autumn's deep rust, winter's pale breath. You've stopped thinking of it as something you built. Now it feels like something that has always been here, a feature of the land and of you. The day begins slowly. The air carries the scent of wet leaves and faint chlorine. You step outside barefoot, a cup warming your hands. The sun has just begun to lift itself over the roof. and the pool lies still, holding a perfect image of that climb. Mist curls along the surface like a thought trying to take form. You kneel and watch it for a while. It moves without sound, without urgency. A dragonfly hovers for a moment above the deep end, then darts away into light. You think about how much time you've spent here, how many mornings began with the same slow step across the patio, the same pause before dipping your fingers into the water. It has become ritual, a quiet communion between you and reflection itself. The water is cool, softer than air. You trace a line through it and watch the ripples spread outward. They distort the sky for a few seconds, then restore it, flawless, forgiving. You've always loved that. The way disturbance becomes calm again, how nothing, not even movement, leaves a permanent scar. The first real summer after you built it remains vivid, etched in light and sound. You remember the kids' hesitant first jumps, how they squealed at the cold, how quickly that shock turned to laughter. The air shimmered with sun and movement. You stood nearby, towel in hand, smiling in disbelief. That something once so quiet in your mind could now echo with such life. Each summer since has written its own story. You've hosted birthdays and slow Sundays, small gatherings and loud evenings that ended in everyone drifting lazily in the water under a pink and gold sky. Music would play softly in the background, barely audible over laughter. And every year you found yourself thinking that the water seemed to remember, that somehow it carried traces of every voice that touched it. When friends visited, they'd always remark how peaceful it felt here. You'd nod, not trying to explain. You can't explain peace. You can only create the conditions where it might appear. Sometimes the kids would bring new friends, and you'd watch them jump in as if they'd been part of this ritual forever. The pool was never territorial. It welcomed everyone equally. That's the nature of water. It doesn't ask who you are before holding you. As the years passed, the pool became as much a part of your evenings as your mornings. Dinner plates cleared. The sky shifting toward indigo, someone would always suggest a quick swim. The lights would hum to life beneath the surface, casting rippling gold onto faces, onto arms resting lazily on the coping. You'd slip in, feeling the warmth of the day still lingering in the water. Your children would float quietly nearby, their voices lower now, their laughter tempered by growing years. Sometimes conversation filled the air, sometimes silence did. Both felt equally complete. There was a certain moment, usually just after sunset, when the world around you seemed to fade entirely, leaving only water, breath, and reflection. You'd look up to see the first stars appear, then down to find them mirrored perfectly below. It was impossible to tell which was real, and it didn't matter. The pool had become a threshold, a place where time and light blurred together, where the boundaries between outer and inner softened. You learned to trust that quiet. You found, to your surprise, that it taught you more about living than words ever could. When the leaves turned amber and gold, you discovered a new kind of beauty. The water darkened with the sky, each fallen leaf resting like a small piece of art on its surface. You used to remove them quickly, worried about cleanliness, perfection. But now, sometimes, you let them drift a while, They looked like memories you weren't ready to sweep away. Mornings grew colder. Steam would rise gently from the pool, ghost-like trails lifting into air that smelled faintly of earth. You'd wrap yourself in a blanket and watch it from the terrace. Even without swimmers, it seemed alive, breathing softly, waiting. It was during one of those autumn mornings that you realized you no longer thought of the pool as separate from yourself. It reflected not only your face but your moods, your cycles of effort and rest. It reminded you without words that calm isn't the absence of motion. It's motion without resistance. Winter was quieter still. The water took on the color of the sky, pale, silvery, almost invisible. You rarely swam then, but sometimes on crisp days you'd break the stillness just to watch the ripples under frost. You'd walk the perimeter slowly, boots crunching on stone dusted with frost, and think of all the summers condensed into that reflective surface. The garden slept around it, trees bare, grass muted, and yet the pool remained vibrant beneath the stillness, its quiet hum like a heartbeat beneath the frozen air. You began to understand that beauty doesn't need activity to exist. Sometimes it's enough just to witness, to see how light changes, how air bends above cold water. Those winter mornings became your favorite meditation, a still mirror beneath a white sky, and you, a single breath watching time exist. Years passed in small increments, birthdays marked by candles and splashes, new milestones reflected in water. The children grew taller, their voices deeper. They began to spend more time floating than playing, more time talking than shouting. You watched them become themselves here. The pool had witnessed their whole transformation, from chaotic laughter to quiet confidence. They learned to swim before they learned to drive, to dive before they learned to doubt. Sometimes you wonder if the patience of water helped shape them, if they absorbed something of its rhythm, its unhurried, forgiving way of holding the world. One summer, your eldest sat with you at the edge after midnight. The lights beneath the water painted your faces with shifting gold. You talked about future plans, places they wanted to go, people they hoped to meet. And when they paused, you realized you were no longer teaching them. You were learning from them. How to let go gracefully. How to trust that what you've built can sustain itself. When they left for new lives, the pool stayed. A quiet reminder that absence is not emptiness. With fewer voices around, the space changed, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt deeper somehow. You swam alone in early mornings, each stroke slow and deliberate. The sound of your breathing echoed softly beneath the surface. The water carried your weight, your thoughts, your memories. It was therapy, prayer, and silence all at once. You'd drift on your back, watch clouds moving lazily overhead, and think how similar they were to ripples, temporary shapes in motion. Sometimes you'd think about nothing at all. Just let the rhythm of water and breath merge into one long exhale. You began to notice small details, the faint shimmer where sunlight first touched the surface each morning, the way insects skated perfectly across the water, the faint reflection of a crescent moon during sleepless nights. You found companionship in those small things. evidence that the world still spoke softly to those who listened. Then came the years when the family returned. Children grown, bringing their own. The first time your grandchildren ran down the garden path, you felt time collapse into itself. The echo of your own kids' laughter seemed to arrive just seconds ahead of the new one. They jumped in without hesitation, fearless, curious, their shouts filling the air with the same bright chaos that once filled your own early summers. You watched them invent new games, claiming the pool as theirs as easily as breathing. The sight was almost too beautiful. A continuation of something that had never truly stopped. You joined them sometimes, splashed when invited, floated alongside when they were tired. Your children watched too, smiling, seeing their own reflections in these small new faces. It struck you then. This pool wasn't just a structure. It was inheritance, not of property, but of experience. It was continuity made visible. That night, after everyone had gone home, you sat by the edge again. Towels hung over chairs. The scent of sunscreen and grilled food lingered in the air. The surface of the water slowly returned to glass. You could still hear laughter echo faintly, as if the water itself had memorized the sound. It is said that water remembers, that it holds patterns, vibrations, traces of touch. You don't know if that's true scientifically, but you believe it emotionally. You've seen how it reflects every season of your life, and somehow each reflection feels familiar, even the new ones. You think of all the days it has mirrored, celebrations, arguments, quiet afternoons with nothing to do, nights when you came outside just to breathe. Every version of you has stood beside it, and the water never judged, never questioned, only reflected. Honestly, gently, you've come to understand that reflection itself is love, to be seen without distortion or expectation. And that's what this pool has given you every single day. Sometimes, when you sit here at dusk, you think about the first day, how uncertain you were, how you stood with string and stakes and wondered if it was worth the effort. It feels almost naive now, but also necessary. You had to not know the outcome to create it honestly. The pool became your quiet teacher. It taught you how effort transforms into ease, how stillness can hold energy, how care repeated daily becomes devotion. You realized something important along the way. You didn't build the pool for water. You built it for reflection. Not just the sky's reflection, but your own. The version of yourself that keeps learning to soften, to move without rushing, to accept without clinging. Every time you clean the surface, every time you test the water, you feel gratitude, not for ownership, but for participation. You are part of its cycle now. The thought of leaving comes up sometimes. The children mention downsizing, a smaller home, less maintenance. You nod and smile, but your heart lingers here. Not from attachment, but from connection. The quiet kind that roots itself in meaning rather than possession. If you ever do leave, you hope someone else will sit by this water, listen to the wind ripple across it, and feel the same peace you felt. You hope they'll notice how the light hits it at sunset, how the first stars appear perfectly in its mirror. You hope they'll take care of it, not because it's valuable, but because it's alive. Until then, you tend to it daily, skimming leaves, checking filters, watching reflections. You find calm in the maintenance, the gentle repetition that asks nothing but presence. Tonight, you sit by it again. The air is cool and smells of jasmine. The water is utterly still. A perfect mirror holding both moon and stars. You watch a single leaf drift slowly across the surface. Its reflection glides beside it. Two versions of the same small truth. You think about how many such small things the pool has carried. Leaves, laughter, tears, silence. It has held them all and released them all. You whisper, "Thank you," and the sound dissolves into the night. The surface trembles once, then steadies. You realize something gentle and final. This pool has never truly been about water. It has always been about memory, about love made visible. You close your eyes, and in your mind you see every version of yourself that ever stood here. The younger, impatient builder, the laughing parent, the watchful grandparent, and now this still observer of reflections. The pool holds them all. It is the sum of your seasons, the physical shape of your life's quietest lessons. And in the end, you understand. You didn't build a pool. You built a mirror large enough to hold a lifetime.